welcome back to this video. So in this video we are going to continue from where we left off in the previous video. So we are building this city skyline here, and whilst we are working on this project we are also learning all about CSS variables. Okay, so we've already done steps 1 all the way to 20. Let's continue in this video by working on step 21 to 40. Okay, so for step 21, the buildings are too spaced out, as you can see, and we want to squeeze them together. And the way we are going to do that is by adding 2 empty div elements to the top of the background buildings. Okay, so this is the background buildings. So we want to add 2 empty div elements. So write our div elements like so, and I'm just going to duplicate it. Okay, and the next thing we want to do is want to add 2 more at the bottom of it. So I'm going to copy this, just go to the bottom and add it here. Okay, now we also want to add 1 more in between BB3 and BB4. So this BB3 and BB4. So I'll just copy this and then place it in between BB3 and BB4. Okay, all right. Now this will be added as evenly spaced elements across the container, effectively moving the buildings closer to the center. Okay, so as you can see, yeah. Now the next thing we want to do is want to create a new variable below your building color variable. So this is the building color variable that we have, and want to create a new variable below it. The name, like we learned earlier, to create a variable you need to add 2 dashes, and then you also need to add the name of the variable. In this case, the name is going to be building color 2. The value we want to give it is this hex code here. So I'm just going to copy it and then paste it here like so. All right, now I'm going to set the new variable that we just added as the background color of BB2. So I'll go to where BB2 is. As you can see, BB2 is here. And I'm going to say background color. The value is going to be, to use a variable, you use the var keyword, bring your parentheses like so, and then you write the name of the variable. So in this case, the name of the variable is building color 2. All right, so what we did was first to create the variable here, and then we used this variable as the background for BB2. Now it didn't work, because if it had worked we should have seen the color for BB2 change. So we want to add a fallback value to a variable. You should add a fallback value to a variable by putting it as the second value of where you use the variable. So for example, we have this right here. To add a fallback variable, I'm just going to be say corner, so comma, and then write the value for the fallback. So the property will use the fallback value when there's a problem with the variable. So I want to add the fallback value of green. Now as you can see, it's working. So what is happening is that if there is some kind of a problem with your variable, let's say spelling mistake or anything like that, then the browser will fall back to the fallback value and use that instead. All right, now I want to create another new variable below the ones we've already created, and this one is going to be named building color 3. the value of that new variable is going to be this right here. Then want to use it as the background color of bb3. So where is bb3? This bb3, so I'll say background color, and then the value is going to be var, bring my parenthesis, then I'll say building color 3, but this time around I'll give it a fallback value of pink. Okay, well, that didn't work also, but because I gave it a fallback value of pink, it used the pink instead. All right, now the reason why it didn't work is because the variables you declared in bb1 do not cascade to bb2 and bb3. Okay, so here, as you can see, this is bb1. All right, and the reason why this background color works, even though we haven't given it a fallback value, is because it is within bb1. So let's see our HTML. Inside our HTML, when you look closely, we have bb1. And then inside it, we have bb1a. Okay, so bb1a is inside bb1. All right, that's why we are able to declare the variable here for bb1 and then apply it for bb1a, as you can see. But bb2 and bb3 are outside of bb1. So the variable that you created for bb1 cannot be applied to bb2 and bb3. That's why it didn't work, and we had to rely on a fallback value. Okay, so for us to fix that, we are going to need a root selector. Now the root selector can apply to every element. So when you create a variable in the root selector, you can use it on all elements. So the way you create the root selector is you bring your colon, write root, and then you bring your curly braces. So because of these, variables are often declared in the root selector. This is the highest level selector in CSS. Putting your variables there will make them usable everywhere. So now I want to add the root selector to the top of your style sheet, and we are going to move all the variable declarations that we have so far into our root selector. So I'll just cut them here, then go and drop them in the root selector. All right, now as you can see, the colors change back to the original colors that we gave them and not the fallback value. Okay, moving on, now that you've worked the box out and the buildings are the right colors, you can go ahead and remove all the fallback value from the two places they were used. So first, I'm going to remove the green fallback value, and then also go ahead and remove the pink fallback value. You should remove the fallback in the background color from bb3. Okay. Yeah. Now create another variable named building color 4. So this time around, we are going to create it inside the root selector. So the name of the variable is going to be building color 4, and the value is going to be this right here. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it like so. Make sure it's in the root selector this time, then use it to fill in the last building. So the last building is bb4. So I'll go down to bb4 here. I'll say background color, And then to use the variable, I have to use the var keyword, bring my parenthesis like so, and then write the name of the parenthesis inside, the name of the variable inside the parenthesis. So building color 4. All right, now as you can see, all of our buildings are properly colored like we want them to. All right, now for step 28, we can see that the background buildings are starting to look pretty good. So what we are going to do is you're going to create a new div below the background buildings, and we are going to call it foreground buildings. Okay, so first of all, before we do that, as a reminder, this is the project that we are working on. And as you can see, we have 4 background buildings, this here, and then we also have some foreground buildings here. Okay, so we want to create a container that will hold the foreground buildings. So we are going to give that container a class, and the value of the class is going to be foreground buildings. All right. Now you want the foreground buildings container to sit directly on top of the background buildings element. Okay, so we want to give it a width and height of 100%. So first, let's select it. We'll write foreground buildings, and then we'll give it a width value of 100%. Let's also give it a height value of 100%. Then we want to set the position to absolute. So give it a position property with a value of absolute. We also give it a top property with a value of 0. This will make it the same size as the body and move the start of it to the top left corner. Okay, let's continue and see what that means. Okay, so now inside our foreground buildings div, we are going to add 6 div elements, and we are going to give them the class of FB1 all the way to FB6. So I'll add the first one, which will have a class of FB1, and then I'm going to use the shortcut hold Option and Shift and then press down. If you are on Windows, hold Alt and Shift and then press down. So I'm going to create 6 of them. Change this from FB2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so FB3 here. All right. Now for step 31, what we want to do is we want to give the FB divs that we just added, we want to give each one of them a width and a height. So you're going to start with FB1. FB1 is going to have a width of 10% and a height value of 60%. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this and then paste 5 of them. Okay, so I'm going to change this from FB1 to FB2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So I have to delete this one from here. Now let me go ahead and give them the proper width and height value. So for FB2 is going to be 10% and 40%. So 10% and then 40%. We also have 10% and 35% for FB3. So 10%, 35%. Next up, for FB4, we want 8% and then 45%. So I'll clean this up, change it to 8%, and then change this one from 60 to 45%. Last but one, FB5 will have 10% and then 33%. So we already have 10% here. Change this to 33%. And then for FB6, the last one will have 9% and 38%. So I'll clean this up, change it to 9%, and then change this also to 38%. Okay, now as you can see, we have all 6 of them, but they are stacked one on top of the other. But that's not how we want it. We want it to be, instead of from top to bottom, we want it to be left to right as we have it for the background buildings. So the first thing we are going to do is that for the background buildings container, we are going to turn it into a flex container. And the way we are going to do that is to give it a display property with a value of flex. Now, once I give it a display property with a value of flex, it is no longer stacked from top to bottom, but rather from left to right. Okay, the next we want to change is the alignment. So currently, the default is that they are aligned from flex start, which is at the top. So they are aligned at the top. So I'll say align items, and then I'll say flex end. Okay, so that brings them to the bottom like so. And then I'm going to use justify content. The value I'm going to give it is space evenly, because that's what the requirement gives us. The requirement says we should use flexbox to evenly space the building. So the value is going to be space evenly. Now our foreground buildings are aligned properly, just like the background buildings. Okay, so let's continue. The next thing we want to do is to optimize your code. So first, we are going to move the position and top properties from foreground buildings to background buildings. Okay, so we are going to go to the foreground buildings. As you can see, move the position and top property. So as you can see, where's the foreground buildings? Okay, so here is it. So you're going to move this one here. I'll cut it out. Then I'll come and paste it here. Okay, and what I am going to do is we want to select both background buildings and then foreground buildings there. So we have our background buildings here. I'm just going to bring a comma and then also write dot foreground buildings. Okay, so this will apply those styles to both of the elements. You can use a comma to separate selectors like this, as I've done here. All right, now that we've done that, we can go ahead and delete the old foreground buildings declaration. So as you can see, for this old foreground buildings, we have a width 100%, height 100%. We have this display of flex, align items, and space evenly. So as you can see, this is the same thing that we have here. Where is it? It's the same thing that we have here. Okay, so instead of writing it for both background buildings and then foreground buildings, we just use this selector separated by comma, and then we write it once for both of them. So we don't have to write it separately for each one. So I'm just going to delete this one since we don't need it anymore. And then move on to the next step, which is 35. So the skyline is coming together, and the next thing we want to do is to fill in the background color property of the foreground buildings as well. We've already filled in the background color of the background buildings, and want to do the same for the foreground buildings, because at the moment they are just plain figures. So the first thing we want to do is to use building color 1 variable to fill in FB3 and 4. So this is FB3 and 4. I'm going to say background color. I'll bring var keyword because I'm coming to use a variable, and I'll write the name of the variable inside the parentheses. So in this case, the name of the variable is building color 1. And since we are doing the same thing for FB4, I'll just go ahead and copy this and then paste it here. Okay, next up, we want to use building color 2 for FB5 and building color 2 for FB5. So let's go to FB5. I'll say background color, write var, bring my parentheses, and then use building color 2. Okay, then for FB2 and FB6, I want to use building color 3. So I'll just copy this, go to FB2, then I'll change this from 1 to 3. Then I'll copy the same thing and go and paste it in FB6. And then finally for FB1, I am going to use building color 4. So again, I'll just copy and paste and then change this from color 3 to color 4. All right. Now we can move on to the next step. So the next step we want to do is to squeeze the building together again, because when you look at our final view, there is no spaces between them. Okay, so we want to squeeze the buildings together again, and the way we are going to do that is to add 2 empty div elements within both the top and bottom of the foreground buildings. So let's first do it for the top. We'll say div. It's going to be an empty element, so div like so. I'll just copy and paste it, then copy both of them, paste 2 below like so. Then we want one more in between FB2 and FB3, so I'll copy one of the divs, come here between FB2 and FB3 and paste one there. All right, now as you can see, our buildings have been pushed together closely. For step 37, what we are going to do is to move the position of FB4 to where it is now so we want to move the position of FB4 relative to where it is now by adding a position of relative. Okay, so this is FB4. Let's add a position relative. Then let's give it a left value of 10%. And we also want to do the same for FB5, but use right instead of left. So let's do it and watch what happens. So we'll say position relative right with a value of 10% as well. Okay, so now this moves FB to the left a bit and then moves the FB5 to the right. All right, so this ends up covering the remaining white spaces we had earlier in the buildings. For step 38, we want to add some comment because the code is getting very long. Okay, so we want to add some comments so that it will be easy to know which code is doing what in our CSS. So the first comment we want to add is the foreground buildings here, which says foreground buildings, FB stands for foreground buildings. So we are going to add it above FB1. So FB1 is here. And if you want to add comment, you can use the shortcut command and then you press /. Okay, command /, or you can just write the / and then write star. Then come here to the end of the comment, write star and then /. Okay, but I just prefer using the shortcut because why not? It's just easier to do it that way. So I'll just paste it here and I'll use the shortcut. Once again, it's command or control /. All right, let's move on. So for 39, we want to create a new variable in the root. So this is the root selector. I want to create a new variable. Sorry, this one is not a building color. The name of this variable is going to be window color 1, like so. And then the value is just going to be black. Okay. Now, let's look at using gradients in CSS. So gradients are just a way to transition between two or more colors, and they are applied to the background property, and this is how the syntax looks like. So first you have to write the name of the gradient, bring your parentheses, and then within the parentheses you write the colors that you want to use. So for our case, we want to add a background property below the background color of BB1A. So this is BB1A. We come here and then we go below it. Then we use background. So in this case, the gradient type or the name of the gradient is a linear gradient. So I write linear gradients like so. Bring my parentheses, and then inside the parentheses I'm going to use the variables. So the first color I want to use is building color 1. Now remember that to use a variable you have to write the var keyword. So first I write the var keyword, bring your parentheses, and then the name of the variable, which in this case is building color 1. Bring your comma, and then the second color is going to be window color 1, which is also a variable. So you bring your var keyword, bring your parentheses, and then write the name of the variable, window color 1. Okay, so as you can see, the gradient is working. So we start with building color 1, which is this purplish color, and then it moves to black, which is the second color that we gave it. Okay. All right, so I'll end this one for this video. So we've looked at step 20 to step 40. Now in the next one, we are going to work our way from step 41 all the way to 60. So we are doing it 20 steps at a time. Okay, so this is where I will end, and see you in the next one.